Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time for joining us today for our board chair check-in and update meeting. My name is Will Marie Newton, and I will be your moderator today. In order to avoid background noise, I ask that you please mute yourself if you're not speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. If you have a webcam, we welcome you to turn it on so we can make this more interactive. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under Services. And now I'd like to introduce Patrice McCarthy, CABE's Executive Director and General Counsel.
Thanks very much, Will Marie, and good morning, everyone. I see Lee posted a comment about Husky Day being more muted when departments are being cut 20%, and absolutely. That is a concern, and that's why budgets are at the top of the agenda again today. We will conclude this morning's board chair check-in at 10 of 12 because CABE has a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee meeting that begins virtually at noon. So we need to switch over. And Mark, I get the funny feeling that your background is not necessarily in Norwich, but it looks delightful. And since I'll be doing a NIASC visit, accreditation visit next week in Belgium, I think it may look a little more like where I'm going to be.
Yeah, no, this is definitely not Connecticut.
The tulips
Although we do have a huge tulip farm, Wicked Tulips.
I'm going next week.
Yeah, which has their huge farm in Preston.
That Lisa can speak from personal experience about how wonderful it is. I'm guessing it's the windmill that sort of gave it away.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have visited the Keukenhof Gardens in outside Amsterdam, which is probably the most magical place on earth.
Great. Well, to switch from spring flowers to spring budgets, we identified that as the topic of the day and then moved to anything else that we can do to be supportive of you. We do want to remind you of our new initiative to provide additional support to board chairs. And we have identified a cadre of experienced board leaders who are under contract with us due to a contract that we have with the State Department of Education in order to provide support to board chairs, whether they be newly elected board chairs or whether they be experienced board chairs that are confronting a particularly challenging issue. Nick, do you want to talk a little more about that? Oh, we can't hear Nick.
How about now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, I forgot there's a button on the actual microphone too. I left off. Yeah, we have 13 board chairs already signed up and been assigned mentors. And the mentors seem to be very enthusiastic. They've all reached out. I think a couple have already had lunch and or breakfast together. And they're really going the extra mile to really welcome you and to be a part of the help. So if anyone is interested, reach out to me. What we're basically doing is senior staff is meeting pretty much once a week or so anyway, for a variety of things, but we always add extra time and we go through who the mentors are, who the mentees are, and try to come up with matches that we think will be helpful to both sides. And we seem to have been pretty successful so far. So if you're interested, please reach out to me and caruso@cabe.org, and we'll be happy to put you in the group. And it's pretty exciting. People seem to be very enthused, and we're looking forward. I also want to just add that this is in addition to all the service that you get from CABE. We're not looking for less phone calls from you for us if you have questions or need help. We're always here to do that, but sometimes it just helps to get that phone call from another chair. And I mean, I was a chair 30 something years ago. It doesn't count anymore. But for those of you who are looking for that extra, even just a sympathetic ear, it seems to be working pretty well. And we're learning. So if you have any ideas, to help make it better as we go along. I think I see a couple people that are familiar, so maybe you're already involved in it. But I'll stop now and just let you know it's there, and we're very happy to offer it as a service.
Thanks, Nick. All right, how are your budgets going? What are your challenges? I see Mary Beth. I don't think it's necessarily smiling, but reacting, shall I say. What do you have to share with your colleagues?
We met with the Board of Finance Tuesday night. My weeks blend too much, so I can't even remember what day of the week it is. While it wasn't any cut, let me say any cut is devastating to a Board of Education, no matter what the amount is. After a 2.5-hour meeting, because they also did the town side, we were cut $385,000 in our general operating budget, which in talking to the superintendent will equate to probably around 3 layoffs plus other things that will be, we will have to get rid of. But what's very troubling is, and we've been battling this since February, we put Chromebooks in our budget. We went on a plan for 4 to 5 years of replacing the Chromebooks that we received from the state when COVID went into effect. They will not acknowledge that our Chromebooks are part of a capital budget and part of infrastructure, and they're saying that we're using them as textbooks, and we're not. What happened, and I've been battling this since February, is one of my board members did not support the Chromebooks in the capital budget, wanted them in the general budget, and they just don't go there. They're part of infrastructure. We explained everything. The board member would not listen, had a lot of sidebar conversation with Board of Finance members, and right out of the bat on the capital, boom, we lost our Chromebooks. And it's very concerning, because our Chromebooks do need to be replaced, and to try to put this $132,000 into our budget, it can't happen. So in total, we lost $520,000 the other night, and it will, we'll see what happens come June 4th. And we do have our public hearing on April 30th. We will rally our troops, but the board member did a lot of damage to us, and did a lot of damage in another aspect too, where we're getting questions that are never typical of Board of Finance members, and a lot of sidebar conversations are going on, and we're very upset about it. So that's how we made out so far.
I'm sorry, and I think the Chromebook issue certainly is one that we knew was going to become a challenge when there were the resources in place during COVID, but Chromebooks don't last forever.
Right.
And students come and go. And everyone found how important it was to instruction, but now there have to be the resources to continue the support. Lee, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think a sort of related issue that I'd been hoping to get some advice on, where we have a Board of Finance that just has a blind spot that we cannot figure out how to explain to them. And in this case, it's we send students to various high schools, mainly Woodstock Academy, but some others, and they get that the budget goes up when we have more students in a particular year entering than we have graduating, but they can't grasp why the entire budget doesn't go down when the number goes down. So we have fewer students entering next year. We lowered, that did lower the budget by $95,000, but the health insurance went up, contracted raises went up. So the overall budget was, it came in, our ask was 3.2%, which is well below a lot of people's, but they still cut us that 95,000, which had already come out again, insisting that, why didn't the whole budget go down? And we bring it in the presentation. I just cannot figure out a way to get them to grasp that, that this has gone on for years, where they just can't grasp that's not the entire budget. And it sounds like it's a similar thing with the Chromebooks for Mary Beth. And I just don't know how people deal with, I love everybody on that board separately, but together they seem to have this like weird groupthink and blind spot, and I don't know how people deal with this.
Any advice? Colleen?
Just from the Chromebook perspective that Mary Beth seems to be going through, I'm just thinking about your insurance, your cybersecurity, in that if you're allowing students to use their own devices, which we did for a while, we were allowing students to bring in their own devices. Our insurance carrier said no more and told that is not safe, because if students are bringing in their own devices, their phones, whatever, the iPads, whatever, that could infect your network. What we've done is all our students have their own Chromebooks, and we did that during COVID. We bought the additional Chromebooks that no one wanted us to have either, but we used our Art Besser funds to do that. And now no one is allowed on the network unless the students aren't allowed on the network unless they're using one of our devices, simply because of cybersecurity. We don't want any, and you may want to approach it from that standpoint, that you want to secure your network in light of all the threats that are going on to schools with ransomware and things of that nature, that you want to protect the network, and therefore you need to have control of whatever device that student is using. So you may want to pitch it that way. I don't know what your insurance carrier is saying. I don't know, obviously I don't know your situation, but just thinking that perhaps that may be an approach, that why your students all need Chromebooks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna take those suggestions up with my meeting with the superintendent. It's either later today or tomorrow, because we have to have some serious conversation about what's going on here between my board, the Board of Finance, and this. So thank you so much, Colleen.
Yeah, and maybe invite your Board of Finance and your town selectmen into the schools. See, I know, you know what, honestly, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
That's the bottom line. They truly don't know what education is like today. And we've been parading our Board of Finance people and selectmen. We've been bringing everybody in. See what education is like today, folks, because it ain't what you remember.
No,
So
no.
just
Thank you so
food for
much.
thought. No problem.
Lee?
So we had some similar issues, not with technology. We pay for that out of our operating budget, but something we did that was very helpful was we had our CFO, Chief Operating Officer, meet with the towns, and they went through everything, what is capital and what is operating. And it was, I'm sure, a hassle for everybody and a really long meeting, but at the end of it, they cut out one $35,000 like heating thing, and the rest they adjudicated as capital. So once the town side gave us that, there was no more discussion with Board of Finance. So we didn't have to do it anymore. And that's on a 10-year plan.
That's terrific.
If you figure out how to deal with a rogue board member who goes to the Board of Finance on their own, then please let me know.
It might be crucial conversation that I have with the superintendent and this board member very soon, because it's devastating right now what's going on.
Mark?
Yes, so our Chromebooks, we funded through technology grants the past couple of years, but then those grants have gone away. And in order to get some more money, what happened is the superintendent and the technology department sat down and they went through all the software and the software licenses, seeing what's duplicative and what we can eliminate. And I think they saved like $1 million just from updating the software licenses. That's where the real money is. It's actually not in the hardware. The hardware is relatively cheap. It's the software maintenance that is expensive.
Thanks for that, Mark. Other comments on this issue?
Well, I just, if you don't mind, just real quick.
Go ahead, Lynette.
Just wanted to say that to Colleen's point, it is important that you know, your councils and selectmen and however your structure is, that they do know about things that are happening kind of ahead of time. Something really successful happened with Bloomfield this year between the town and the board was we met well before budget talks. So that they could see, you know, what we were going through, what kind of cuts that we were going to have to make. You know, they gave us some guidelines. We didn't meet them 100%, but they did meet us halfway. And it was a great experience to have everyone in the room. We met with the town manager, the mayor, the finance directors, and on the town side as well as on the board side, and the superintendent. So we had those conversations early. Not that they're telling us what to use our money for, but it kind of opened their eyes to some of the things that we have to cut out when we have such constraints. A big topic in our town this year was we were getting rid of summer school because it was no longer being funded by the state. The board had decided in the previous year that we were going to have to get rid of it because we couldn't support that amount of money that was necessary. So, you know, we let the council know that, and then they did whatever they needed to do and came back to us and said, we'll give you X amount of dollars. Can you make that work for summer school? So it was a really great collaboration. I'm so proud of the things that we were able to do. And that's not to say that we didn't have to make some tough choices, but I think it's an easier pill to swallow if there's that collaboration and that they have a true understanding of what you're going through. And I think I saw a comment somewhere where people were able to walk through the schools and take them on tours and things. So I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lynette. It certainly is true that continuing efforts, even when they seem that rather challenging, to establish ongoing communications with municipal officials, because people come and go. And so even if there hasn't been an opportunity in the past, for whatever reason, there might be an opportunity going forward to have that communication on an ongoing basis. And sometimes it only takes one person to change on the municipal side to be more receptive to the conversation. I saw Jody and then Jill.
This is more for Lee, and I don't want to take everybody's time. And Lee, we can certainly talk offline as well. But having developed school schedules and district schedules, there isn't a one-to-one relationship between the loss of a student and the loss of a classroom teacher. You're still going to run your cafeteria program. If you have a student who one less student, you're still going to have the same number of teachers. So you get to certain thresholds where if you have this number of students in a particular grade, maybe you could reduce a teacher. But if you're in a K-6 school and you lose 10 children, all from different grades, you don't have that luxury of just simply reducing a teacher. So there are a lot of mechanics involved in scheduling. And that's also true when you add a student. You don't necessarily have to hire a teacher. And if you're in a plane and one person leaves the plane still goes. And you still have airport staff and you have taxiing and the restaurants don't close because one person left an airplane. So it really is you really have to sort of look at where the students are, where they're coming in, where they're leaving, and the impact that will have on staffing.
Thanks, Jody. Jill.
I was curious to know, a couple of people were talking about conversations they were having with town officials, et cetera. There's a lot of conversations that we have, but that are offline, if you will. I'm curious to know what percentage of these discussions you're having in order to prep people. What are you doing publicly versus where are you just gathering an intel, and how do you balance the need to do business in public with fact finding?
Who wants to jump in on that?
Well,
Colleen.
okay.
I could.
And then Lynette. And then Seth.
Well, what we do is we started our budget process in December, invited our administrators in to publicly share what their needs were. That was the kickoff to our budget. Then we had budget workshops. We've had public conversations. We went through our budget and cut 2 percentage points off of it publicly with and invited all the town councilors, invited the Board of Finance, because our process starts in December and doesn't finish up until May. So we have been talking everywhere, anywhere, to anyone, publicly, privately, we do it all. Just because we want people to be educated. Our budgets are complex and complicated, and people don't understand education, obviously. And so they'll say things like, I think Lee posted, why did you cut the gifted and talented? Really? That's all you're concerned about? Hello. So at the end of the day, it's just communicating on all fronts and going to the Board of Finance public meetings and their workshops and answering any questions that they have. We started a grid for questions for any public official that want to ask, and they can see all the prior questions that were asked. It's stuff like that, just communication, any way you can do it. We've got to educate them.
So we do, thank you, Colleen. We do a lot of that, but one of the things I'm curious about and where we've had a bit of a rub is, so how did you decide that 2% is the number that you wanted to cut inside of your budget? Was that something you generated from inside of the board, or is that based on advice that you received from your Board of Finance and or town council?
That was organically decided at a board meeting. We had a I called a special meeting, in fact, just to come to the budget number, because we had budget workshops outside of our general board meeting. And then we ended up sitting down as a board, going over, okay, what are your ideas? What are your ideas? What are your ideas? We all brought them all together. And that's how we came to the number. Now, did everybody agree on it? No, because there were some people, for example, one thing we all agreed on, we had Apple contracts for our teachers and actually it was just for our teachers. That Apple leases that we got rid of, and we converted our teachers from Apple over to PCs, which wasn't popular with the teachers, but it saved us a heck of a lot of money. So that kind of thing, we did that all publicly. And so that's where we came down a number. Was our administration happy? Nobody was happy with it, but it was done publicly so that everybody could contribute. Everybody could say what they had to say. We voted. It wasn't pretty. It was a 5-4 vote, but we got to a number. So.
Thank you.
Thanks. Lynette.
So a lot of what Colleen said was true for Bloomfield as well. We public and private. My board empowered me to have the conversations ahead of time with the superintendent, as well as the mayor and her finance people. So the communication is key. Like Colleen said, it's like you have to hit it on all levels and all fronts. We had workshops with the board members. Once we came up with, some numbers, we had workshops with the town council. So they were able to ask their questions as well. So it didn't have to be a meeting per se. You take a couple council members, or you have a couple board members, and then, but everything was public, just in these, smaller groups.
Are these meetings in the smaller groups happening? Are they warned and with an agenda, or are they just meetings?
They're just conversations. The town council was able to ask any questions that they had. And it can be, they can be as in-depth as you want them to be or need them to be, or, they can be formal or informal. It's just a matter of making sure the conversation happens.
Thank you.
And just to remind everyone of the legal parameters, that if you are convening a quorum of the Board of Ed, or on the town side, the same thing, a quorum of the town council, then it does be, even if you don't intend it to be an official meeting, it becomes a meeting that needs to be posted because you are discussing board business.
Right, hence the smaller groups.
Exactly. Just wanted to, for anybody that's a newer board chair that might not have that perspective. So let's see, I think Seth had his hand up.
Yeah, hi. We kind of do similar things to what Colleen mentioned and also to what Jill mentioned and Lynette. We've got a tremendous amount of public process, and it begins with our board finance committee, who sets the schedule and the agenda for our special budget meetings, and we have budget workshops that are all public, and on Zoom. We do all our meetings are hybrid now. So everything's available and everything is also viewable. If you go online, you can go to our agenda center and hop onto a movie on YouTube to see a past meeting. So everything's public, everything's archived, and then the question becomes like, how much of this interboard coordination and what type of interboard coordination can occur that helps to inform the three major boards in town as to what's going on and allows coordination to work toward general goals. All of the votes and all of the final decisions have to be public. But what we do is we have periodic, we call them tri-chair meetings. It's the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I mean, it's the first select woman, the chair of the Board of Finance, and the chair of the Board of Ed. We include the superintendent. We include, whenever it's necessary, our facilities guy. And we also include, when at all of them, our finance director, who, interestingly, our finance director is a shared position between the town and the district. So we save a little money there. It also helps facilitate coordination because we have a professional staff person doing some of the figuring and recommendations. And so that helps us also to get some coordination done. This year, our budget started out at, we tried to be lean, even though our health insurance is our second biggest line, went up 8.4%, is going up 8.4%. We did careful work and came out with a budget that was among the lowest in the state. Our proposal was 3.41%. We had a tri-chair meeting, and the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen have been really the chair of the Board of Finance and the first select woman had been coordinating as well to try to massage a certain tax impact for the overall budget. And obviously that impacts us because we're 2/3 of the whole budget, right? Of the overall town budget is Board of Ed budget. So we had discussions, and the discussions were, well, it gave us an opportunity to point out, here's the cost drivers we're dealing with. Here's why you can trust that 3.41% is a very, very fair and tight budget for this year, increase number. And they were able to articulate their concerns. We have a big school building project going on and renovations. And we also have a town community center that's being built. So there's a lot of projects going on. So they articulated that they were concerned that because of all of that, we might, our budget might get shot down the first time. So the superintendent and I went back to the drawing board. We found areas that the superintendent felt that we could offer back in cuts that would not touch the educational programming, and also creative ways that we could talk to the tri-chairs and say, look, why don't we get these things off the budget? But if there's additional money, like there was ARPA money left over, we need new band uniforms, $90,000, right? Why don't we take that off the budget as a one-time expense so it doesn't increase the budget basis, but we need you to use ARPA money that comes back unused to help fund that. So we'll do a separate appropriation. So we worked out all that stuff. We came to an agreement or understanding that I would try to sell a $200,000 cut to my board, and the Board of Finance chair would try to sell a similar cut to his board. Everything was articulated on the record. I painstakingly went through all the details of what was discussed on the record so that there was no lack of transparency. And then even after all of that, we got cut by 240,000 instead of 200,000. It's only $40,000, but that's on top of a slim budget and on top of our 200,000 that we coughed up. So I'm a little bit rankled at present because our tri-chair private talks didn't seem to work out the way they should have and have the impact they should have. They're voting tonight finally, but I think they're going to vote to remove that 240,000, especially in light of the fact, I hope they don't get further because the Guilford budget just got shot down last night or Wednesday on Tuesday night. So, you know, we're a little bit concerned, but now we're at 3%, which again is among the lowest in the state, if not the lowest. And I'm worried they're going to take more. So that's the whole story of how we interplay between our tri-chair discussions, but also having full board disclosure, transparency, and process, and how it, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Thank you.
And so that you don't become too disheartened by these efforts that don't yield the outcome that you anticipated. Also reflect upon the fact that but for those conversations, it might have been worse. So you did build understanding. There might have otherwise been a knee-jerk cut that was completely unworkable. So I know that doesn't help when you can't fund programs that you want. But what I'm saying to everyone is don't not do it just because it's not always successful, or certainly not always 100% successful. Other comments? Mark.
Yeah, so for the past 4 years, we've had a more formal process. We don't have a Board of Finance in Norwich. It's we have just the Board of Ed and the City Council, which has a city manager system. So we do our budget hearings. They're all public, available on Zoom. And then it switches over to what we call the ad hoc committee, where we have a group that meets board members and city council members, and we hash out the budget in those meetings. So we have 3 or 4 of those meetings to try and lower the number. Problem in Norwich is we don't have our own high school, so this year we proposed $100 million budget, and 30 million of that goes to our high school students. So it's tuitions through other institutions, and we really don't have control over that money. Whereas other boards that have their own high schools, they can squeeze some money out of the high schools. We can't. We're presented with tuition bills. We got to pay them, or our kids don't get to go to school.
Yeah.
So that's on that side. And then the city council makes their decision in June. Luckily this year, I mean, it's a short session up in Hartford, so we'll get an idea on the income side by May 8th, the session ends. So we'll be able to determine what's coming in. Right now, between the city manager's proposed budget and our proposed budget, we've got a $7 million difference. So we've got to find $7 million somehow.
Wow. But the issue that you've raised and that Lee raised, and I think Mary Beth, you also tuition out for high school, I believe? No? Okay. But Mark and Lee share a problem that districts that tuition out their high school students have confronted for years, which is the impact of not having the budget approved that the board proposes is always on the elementary portion, because you have to pay the tuition. It's like special ed. You've got to pay the cost for the out-of-district placements, and make adjustments elsewhere.
We have a unique situation in Griswold. We have 7 tuition partnership towns, Norwich being one of them. And I know it's hard to believe, but we get no credit for our valiant efforts. We self-fund 10% of our budget by our tuition. So this year we projected $3 million in tuition. We actually went over and brought in 3.295 million. They only apply 3 million and the other 295,000 gets credited to the reserve account. And next year we're projecting 3.5 million. We have 7 towns and, you know, we're happy to have the kids. We try to come in under what other towns they can be tuitioning those students to. So we do have a very good business model, but it's tough for us. It is really tough. We just did huge renovations to our old senior center to move our alternative school over there. And the town is selling the old alternative school building. We paid $660,000 out of our ARP-ESSER money to do this because our students needed that go to that school a better learning environment, and they love it now, and we're happy. But again, we tell the Board of Finance that we did this. We didn't come to you for an appropriation, and it's like, okay, thanks. That's great. You did that, you know, but we fight a losing battle up here. It's tough. It's really tough. But again, we have a unique 7 partnership town, and that's thanks to the superintendent we have. He's built a lot of relationships with all of these superintendents. So kudos to him, but you know, we struggled too, with the Board of Finance with this. And I don't know. We're just, everybody's fighting a losing battle right now. And until the state starts stepping in and applying more money for us, instead of putting more mandates on us where we don't get any money for these mandates, we're all going to be having this conversation year after year.
Yeah, and you highlight the fact that whether you're a receiving district of tuition students or a district sending students out for high school, the challenges are the same.
The same.
The state, the reliance on the local property tax and the unwillingness in many cases, not necessarily inability to pay, impacts every student.
Yep.
Regardless
Absolutely.
of where they are in the state.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I'd just like to give a shout out to Mary Beth. The high school students that we send to Griswold really love it. I mean, they're looking for that smaller environment, more personal attention, and you have a great special ed program too.
We do, and we have, last year we put in a new multi-purpose field. Of course, that gets thrown in our face all the time, how that was 3.5 million. But that also helps our athletes. They wouldn't have been able to play on the field. It was so bad if we didn't get the town to, and the taxpayers to agree to this. We do love all of our tuition partnership towns. We love Norwich. The kids are great. We have a lot of great athletes. We have a play going on this week, Legally Blonde. There's so many kids participating in this between the costumes that were made to construction, and a lot of Norwich kids are participating. They're jumping in and enjoying the smaller school setting as opposed to the other school that they have the option to go to. So thank you, Mark. We do love Norwich students, and we have a great collaboration, and we do have a fabulous special ed department.
Other comments, other challenges you're facing, or success stories. How about a success story? What are you celebrating in your school? Well, Mary Beth, they're celebrating a arts performance this week. Who else has something positive happening?
I've got one.
All right, Seth, thank you.
So, our district, our high school, Daniel Hand High School, for a long time, has had a show choir called Daniel Hand Vibe, and it's long been ranked highly nationally, and they always travel to either New York City or Tennessee, usually in alternating years, or down to Disney or Universal Studios to compete in their national competition. And this year they went to New York City and took #1 grand champions for the country. So my daughter was my daughter was a lead a couple of years ago, or 4 years ago, 5 years now, when she was a senior. So I take a lot of pride in 5.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Anyone else have something they want to share? Monica.
Hi there. Yeah, I wanted to share, we just wrapped up our budget season. And while the Board of Finance did cut us down, we did manage to successfully pass a budget with a 5.43% increase. And I just wanted to, it's been, and then listening to everybody here and knowing that we're all going through the same sort of stress in our communities, it was a huge relief that we were able to get it passed. And we did it through, we didn't really even use social media or anything that much, but we did it by individual board members talking to their individual groups in the community. And it seemed to be a great campaign on a personal level in order to support our teachers and our school system and not have us make dramatic cuts. So I just wanted to say that it can happen. I don't know what's going to happen next year, but we had a positive experience this season, despite the initial fear when we had to cut it. We did have to trim it, but we made it through.
Terrific. Thanks for sharing that. Jill.
I have a question, so I'll wait till the kudos are done, but
Any more good stories? All right, I think it's okay to ask a question, Jill.
all right, thank you. So we did end up with a 437, I think. But we also, that includes a $2 million cut. So I'm curious to know if anybody has any great suggestions for how they go about it. Do you give your superintendent a lot of direction before he or she prepares the next cut? Do you wait and see sort of what they prepare and then deliberate it all publicly? What's your general feeling on, again, that question of sort of private guidance versus public deliberation? I know at the end of the day, the vote needs to be public and you want to talk through this, but we also find that there is a level of dragging the public through upset that we're also trying to manage for.
Jen. We cannot hear you, Jen.
Jen, are you using a computer microphone?
All right, does anybody else want to jump in while Jen works on Seth?
Yeah, just a real quick answer. Basically, the chair works closely with the superintendent to try to hash over, like, oof, where do we think we can find this? But then the superintendent gets the charge to go and come up with what they can come with, within those parameters, and sometimes other creative means. And then he comes back to the board at an open board meeting. Well, on an open board meeting, the same night that there's a finance committee meeting. So he goes to the finance committee first that night, and delivers what he feels is where we could sustain the cuts. And then that proposal goes forward to the board and the board votes on it.
Thanks. And Jen put in the chat that she meets with her superintendent beforehand and works through a draft of the proposed cuts before they bring it to the full board. Lee and then Colleen, and then two Lees.
Yeah, similar to Seth. I have some discussion with the superintendent about areas that are maybe off limits, and areas where I'd rather he'd look first. If they're prepays and such, and he hates prepays, but then he brings a list to the board and we'll discuss, with different options, and that's decided in open meeting. We actually, I wouldn't call this a kudo because it's like somebody's bad life decision that's helping us. Our cut is being heavily offset by an older student who's decided to withdraw from special ed, which covers a lot of that cut, but it's like, oh, I feel bad. But I sort of don't feel bad because we don't have to cut something else instead. But thanks.
Thanks. Lee Goldstein.
I don't know your structure for this. For a $2 million cut, we would absolutely go for a restoration. I tell Board of Finance and everybody who wants to hear it, when they say, what would this or that cut do to your budget? I just say, every $100,000 is a teacher-ish. So you figure it out. And I know you don't want to upset the community, and I don't like those kind of games. But for 2 million, I can only assume where you'd be pulling that from. And I personally would marshal our forces and go for a restoration, first to the Board of Finance, and then we've gone to RTM, our town council, when we've had to.
I'm assuming I've never done that or seen that. I'm assuming I know what that means, and I'm assuming it's probably town charter. But basically, what you're saying is you sort of, it's effectively an appeals process, Lee. Is that
Yeah.
what you?
So our first restoration is to Board of Finance, and we say we need you to restore. We need you to fund up to this amount, and they do or don't. And several years ago, when they didn't, it did go to the town council, and then it's a super majority, and they voted for it. We've really worked, to Patrice's point, we have worked so hard over the years, and our budget process is so transparent, and the superintendent really cuts everything, and the leadership team, before we present it publicly. And then that's part of it. So we show in our budget process everything the leadership team would have liked and that didn't make it through to the budget. So, I mean, this year our budget's 8%, and that they pass that like in 10 minutes, because by the time we get to it, everybody knows what we're doing. But we've had it in the past, and 2 million is just too much.
And Lee points out that they've gone that route once when they couldn't absorb the magnitude of the cut. It did damage relationships, but they did get most of the cut restored. All right, any concluding comments? And Lee also points out that in Pomfret, the community is much more supportive of the education budget than the Board of Finance is, which I think is probably not unusual. Mark, you're going to have the final word today.
Okay, so someone came up with the idea that we should write to our federal legislators. They're all running for office again. Senator Murphy, all of our U.S. representatives in the state. There is a pending piece of legislation out there in the U.S. Congress to fully fund the IDEA Act. Fully fund meaning up to the 40% that was promised. Right now, it's funded at about 13%. So we're going to be drafting a letter from the Board of Ed and from our city council to send to our federal legislators to get them to see what they can do to fully support this pending piece of legislation, because that's really the driver in all of our budgets, I think, are escalating and out of control special ed costs. It's affecting everything else.
And are you, Mark, I may have missed this, are you doing this in conjunction with your municipal leaders?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I'd love it if other boards want to do that or want to join with us. If CABE wants to come in on it, I think the more voices, the better. And then so we do like a joint letter to the legislators, and then individually you can write, just I support the IDA Fully Fund Act and send that off. And
we can certainly put something out to all of our members suggesting that out of the board chair call that there be a joint letter. I can tell you that CABE meets with our congressional delegation, the Connecticut delegation, on a regular basis. Our delegation is fully supportive of fully funding the federal commitment of 40%. It's other members of Congress that are the problem. But this does two things. It gives a positive opportunity for your Board of Ed and your municipal official to do something together in communicating a common message. And it also reinforces our delegation when they have to talk to their colleagues from around the country in terms of why this is important. So we thank you for that, and we will put something out. And with that, we will bring this to a close. On behalf of the CABE Board of Directors and staff, we wish you a productive month, and we will see you in May. But keep in
Bye-bye.
touch.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everyone.